Carbs can be monosaccharides, disaccharides, polysaccharides. Let's start talking about monosaccharides. For monosaccharides, we have glucose, fructose, and galactose. Simple sugars. So for disaccharide, we have sucrose, maltose, and lactose. Now for polysaccharides, those are going to be complex. So then you have starch, starch. You have cellulose, pectin, what else? Glycogen and dextrin. Starch is the main carb source in our diet. When I think cellulose, all that comes to mind is cell walls of plants for some reason, and I just imagine a cell wall, nice and green, and then I think that's gonna be sort of like a celery, cellulose, celery. Doesn't that make you think that's very bulky, like you will help to form a bulk, right, in your stool or something? And then the fun fact on that is that cellulose is not digestible by amylase, which is the pectin is another non-digestible polysaccharide. You find pectin in citrus fruits and apples. And pectin, when I think about it, I think apple, and then I think how it can be kind of like, can form like a gel, and that is what gives it that sort of thickening quality. How about this? Think apple pie. You know how in the middle of apple pie, when you cut it, it looks jelly and thickening? I think that's because of pectin. So next time you eat an apple pie, think about that. You're welcome. So glycogen is a polysaccharide. Where do we find glycogen? In animal stores and liver and muscles. Dextrin is the product of the hydrolysis of starch. Sorbitol sounds like a sugar alcohol, right? Oh, sorbitol alcohol. Okay. It comes from glucose, and then sorbitol has a laxative effect. What does that mean? That it can cause, number 3 situation there, right? So it can cause diarrhea. And sorbitol is absorbed by passive diffusion. So when you're passive, you're just chilling, you're kind of slow, right? You're just like, okay, go ahead, passively diffuse. So it's slow to be absorbed, and it gets converted into fructose. The more you know. Now, protein. Protein also has carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but it has about 16% nitrogen. That's what makes proteins different. And some amino acids, as you know, proteins are composed of amino acids. Some amino acids have sulfur, 4 in particular, which would be cysteine, methionine, taurine, and homocysteine. So amino acids can be essential, conditionally essential, and non-essential. The essential amino acids are the ones that our body cannot synthesize from others, and therefore we need to get them from a food source. The conditionally essential amino acids are the ones that our body needs in times of catabolic stress, and they include arginine and glutamine. So let's see how some amino acids can be converted, or they can serve as a precursor to another. So we have tryptophan, that's a precursor for serotonin and niacin. Okay, that makes me think tryptophan, isn't that what's in turkey? And then you eat turkey and you take a serotonin nap and niacin, that I don't know where it comes from. And then you have methionine that can be converted to cysteine, and phenylalanine that can be converted to tyrosine. So proteins can be complete or incomplete proteins. So incomplete protein sources will be the ones that are lacking different amino acids. But my mom knew what she was doing when she was feeding me rice and beans growing up. You know why? Turns out that rice might be low in lysine, but is high in methionine. Meanwhile, beans are low in methionine, but high in lysine. So they complement each other. Eat your rice and beans, guys. So animal protein will be an example of a complete source of protein because it provides all of the essential amino acids. Fat is also composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But triglycerides are formed by 3 fatty acids and 1 glycerol. And triglycerides are the ones that are the most common source of fats in the food. So a triglyceride is a simple fat. And now you have what's called a compound fat. So do you remember the phospholipid bilayer that surrounds the cells? Well, that's going to be considered a compound fat. No. Fatty acids, glycerol, and steroids, they are derived fats because they derive from the enzymatic reaction or breakdown of other types of fats. Fatty acids can be saturated, which means that all of the carbon bonds, they are attached to hydrogens. Those saturated fats are usually solid at room temperature. So you have saturated and then you have unsaturated. The unsaturated can be mono or polyunsaturated. For mono unsaturated, 1 double bond. For poly, 2 or more double bonds. Here's a fun fact. Safflower oil is the most polyunsaturated. So then you have essential fatty acids. So that means that you need them, otherwise deficiency can cause some sort of disease. For those, you're gonna have linoleic and alpha-linoleic. And how I remember is that the alpha almost looks like a 3, right? If you keep drawing on it. So omega-3 is the alpha. So omega-3 and omega-6 both can be beneficial, but usually omega-6 is very available in our diets, right? So what happens with omega-6 is that when you increase your intake of omega-6 and you replace that for your carb intake, is going to lower your LDL cholesterol and raise your HDL. And how I remember, LDL is the lousy cholesterol and HDL is the healthy cholesterol. So we have EPA, DHA, and ALA. Now EPA and DHA are from animal source, usually like fish, and ALA comes from plant sources. So to increase the stability of fats, they can undergo this process called hydrogenation, which means that you add extra hydrogen bonds. In regards to oil, you're gonna have saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated. The oil that provides the most saturated fats is coconut oil. The one that provides the most monounsaturated is olive oil, and the most polyunsaturated is safflower oil. Oils, you could say that you are winterizing oils when you're making them stable for cold temperatures. So phenylalanine can be converted to tyrosine. I almost failed voice lessons. That was my lowest grade ever in school. Glucose pretty much mixes with everything. So you're gonna mix glucose with fructose. You're gonna envision a table and you see fruit on the table with glucose, you get sucrose. Then you have galactose, again with the basic glucose, what do you get? Lactose. Then you have 2 glucoses, which is sugar on sugar on sugar. What do you get? Your chocolate malt, maltose. And that's how we do it. So whenever we have, say, a quiz question and has a bunch of different options, glycogen source, and it has, say, muscles from animals, and then fruits or vegetables or some sort of grain or dairy, which one's gonna have a glycogen source? So obviously it's gonna be the most. So I'm pretty sure I saw something that was like the ribs. And I'm thinking, ribs? Muscles? Ribs? And I thought, oh, intercostals. Weren't those like muscles between the ribs or something? Boom, there you go. That is a practice quiz question that I just gave it to you. What is hydrolysis? Hydrolysis is breaking it down from the sweetest to the least sweet. We have fructose, inverted sugar, sucrose, sorbitol, mannitol, galactose, maltose, lactose. Yes, I'm reading because I have no idea how I'm going to memorize that. So, sweetest, fructose, least sweet, lactose. But remember how we discussed sorbitol, that was the sugar alcohol? Sorbitol is less sweet than sucrose.